The Liberal Party is in free fall after Chrystia Freeland resigned after disagreeing with Justin Trudeau on how to handle the threat of US President elect Donald Trump's tariffs. He's not even Canadian, but his trade negotiations might finally spell the end of Justin Trudeau. I believe this is what we call the Trump effect. I'm Rachel Parker, and you're watching Rachel and the Republic. Hey everyone, welcome back to Rachel on the Republic. I'm your host, Rachel Parker. We are going to be diving into the Trump effect today, talking about how his posts and his trolling of Justin Trudeau and of Canada have led to disaster for the Liberal Party of Canada. Joining me today to discuss is Marty Belanger, best known online as Marty Up North. He's been a guest on my show twice this year, so I guess this makes it 3 times now. Marty, thanks for being here today. I know that you've been talking about this a lot online, trying to, analyze what Donald Trump is doing, how effective it has been. So, right off the top, I want to start by asking you, do you see a clear link between Donald Trump and his threatening of Canada with 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods entering the US market and Chrystia Freeland's resignation from the Liberal cabinet on Monday morning?
Um, Hi, Rachel. That link's hard to make. I've been I'm trying to make that link. I mean, it's to be honest, so much unraveled in the last, call it 3 weeks, right? So it's kind of hard to try and piece it together. There is a link, but I can't make the direct link right now. Like Trump. Let's be, you're spot on. There is a Trump effect. Like Trump's election, I think Trudeau honestly was not expecting Trump to be elected, right? I mean, Trudeau from after Trump left under the Biden administration, Trudeau was, making fun of Trump, cozying up to Biden. And then in the last little while, Trudeau truly picked his candidate. He was betting on Kamala Harris. I think he's honestly been surprised by the election of Trump. And now he's having to deal with it and the consequences of some of the things he said.
Absolutely. I have it right in front of me. I just want to read a couple lines from Chrystia Freeland's resignation letter on Monday. She directly references the threat of the tariffs here. She says, "Our country today faces a grave challenge. The incoming administration in the United States is pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including the threat of 25% tariffs. We need to take that threat extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today, so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. That means eschewing the costly political gimmicks, which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment." So there you clearly see her, as I said yesterday when we covered this on the show as well, she kind of knifes Trudeau in the back on her way out. She essentially accuses him of costly political gimmicks and is saying, we need to have reserves in place so that we can weather these tariffs in case they come into place. Is that sort of what you took out of what she was saying there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I take that out. I think Trudeau is mishandling what's going on right now. Like, but not a lot more than what he's been doing in the past, right? I mean, the Canadian economy is in trouble, the border's in trouble, things like that. And is it a lot worse than what it's been for the last few years under Trudeau? No. And Chrystia Freeland was on board, right? She's his number two, and she was on board with him. So did she have a massive change of heart and resign because she grew a backbone? No. I think Trudeau was mishandling the situation. He panicked a little bit. Things, his demise started accelerating. He was looking for scapegoats. I think he was just honestly going to replace her and try and put somebody else in her position to try and salvage, to drag on a little bit longer before the election. And she quit. She called his crap. So I think there's two stories here. I mean, there is the Trump effect on Trudeau, and then Freeland is a casualty of that, or perhaps she's just a mastermind who played it well. I think she's a mastermind. Actually, that's my conclusion on Freeland. Trudeau misplayed it. Freeland is distancing herself from Trudeau and preparing herself for a potential run at the leadership. I think that's the bigger, that's her story. But But I think Trudeau and the whole country is mishandling Trump, right? The whole thing about Trump declaring a potential trade war with us makes no sense. Like I'm still confused by that whole approach. I mean, I looked at the numbers a lot this week. Canada does about $780 billion worth of trade worldwide, and 80% of our trade goes to the US, like $594 billion last year, the latest year we have. So 80% of what we send abroad goes to the US. They're our biggest trading partner, right? And we're not selling them trinkets. We're selling them stuff that they need, that they want. We're selling them oil, we're selling them fertilizer, grains, things like that. The things that they are short on, they're buying from us. That's legit. Now, Trump's a little upset because he says that, in return, he thinks he's subsidizing us. We bought $373 billion worth of stuff from the US last year. So is there a little bit of imbalance? Absolutely, there is, right? But there's always going to be that imbalance because they're 10 times bigger than us. It's like me being a farmer who has eggs, and the family next door has 10 kids and they sell firewood. Well, he's going to buy more eggs from me than I buy firewood from him. So I think, so when I analyze that, I don't think Trump is serious about this tariff war. That because it makes no sense, first of all, and secondly, it would be devastating for his own country, and thirdly, it's almost illegal. I mean, there's agreements around the world, and you don't just go and do tariffs like that. And if Trump was going to do a tariff like that, he wouldn't telegraph it. He wouldn't give us 6 weeks to think about it. He would do it, once he became president. So I think, when I analyze that situation, I think Trump is just toying with Trudeau. These late night tweets are just him trolling Trudeau, and Trudeau's responding in a bad way. So well played, Trump. I think Trump's playing Trudeau at this point.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you that Donald Trump, I mean, is trolling Trudeau. I think another guest on the show said that Trump is looking for cooperation with Canada. And maybe, there are some border irritants that he wants to have resolved as well. But I think that the main thing is that he does want cooperation with Canada. He kind of wants to show the Trudeau government who's boss again
Yeah.
after the Trudeau government spent the last few years making fun of Pierre Poilievre, comparing him to Donald Trump. And so, yeah, I think he's absolutely looking for cooperation with Canada. And I think probably he thinks one of the best ways that he can get cooperation with Canada is if Justin Trudeau is not at the helm of our country. And so I personally suspect, a lot of people are saying, oh, he keeps making these jokes about Canada becoming the 51st state. Like, what does this mean? We need to buckle up. I'm personally not even thinking that Donald Trump wants to make Canada a part of America. He doesn't want to make us a state. This to me is all very clearly a negotiation tactic.
Yeah, well, actually, you brought up a couple of good points. I mean, one of the things there is some value to the threat that he made of. Let's go back to the tariff threat, right? He did make a threat saying, I'll take it away if you clean up your border. Now, I was naive on that. At first, I thought, ooh, why is he going there, right? Because I thought we all know what's going on at the southern border with the U.S., between Mexico and the U.S. And so I thought his claims that the Canadian border needed to be addressed were a little bit exaggerated. I looked into that. There is he's got a legitimate concern there. So, but did he need to threaten a 25% tariff to get that done? No. Again, he could have just stepped in and, talked about it, and we would have resolved it. But he got some traction on that. That's for sure. But the other thing I go back to is, remember on his first campaign, Trump was elected to clean up the swamp. He didn't finish cleaning up the swamp. Then he had 4 years to think about it. Now, Trump 2.0 is a stronger, better president, and he still wants to clean up the swamp. And I think one of the things he's realized, or he's been told, is that the swamp is deeper than just in his own country, right? There is some swamp all around him. So, and when he talks about the swamp, I think he is truly talking about the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the UN, unelected people like Soros and Schwab, that have that are a threat to him, and we know that Soros and Schwab's and those people have their deep connections, have infiltrated us, and so in a sense he's perhaps right that he's trying to clean up the swamp, and coming after Canada and cleaning up Trudeau and some of that mess is part of that message. So yeah, it's a complicated thing, and it's the Trump effect, right? I mean, Trump is an unpredictable person. I mean, we saw that in Trump 1.0. I kind of thought Trump 2.0 was going to be boring because he was going to be a little more refined in the team he built around him, but he's still Trump. I mean, take away his computer at the end of the night, because tweeting at 3:36 in the morning. I mean, that was the other funny thing. He tweeted about Chrystia Freeland earlier this week, calling her a toxic person. But sorry, Mr. President, but when you tweet the way you are at 3:36 in the morning, you're also being a little bit toxic.
It's interesting when you say there that, he'd promised to drain the swamp, didn't quite get that done in his first term. Now he's looking maybe to do it in his second term as president. And he's been thinking about that over the 4 years. I think he has especially been thinking about draining the swamp over the 4 years, because some of the people that he didn't get rid of were the same people that were coming after him in every avenue of lawfare that they could possibly find to throw at him in the 4 years since, to ensure that he wouldn't become president again. And obviously, they were incredibly unsuccessful in one of the most epic political comebacks we've ever seen, with
Yeah.
Donald Trump being reelected. I want to talk a little bit about your response to Donald Trump's trolling in Canada. I know you've made it pretty clear you don't, think he should be tweeting at 3:36 a.m. This here, you responded online. Obviously, Donald Trump posts on Truth Social rather than X, but his tweets are repurposed for X all the time. And so here you said in response to his latest tweet, again saying that he's going to make Canada an American state, you said, "Let's be real, Mr. President. The USA is not subsidizing Canada. I know you hate Trudeau, but give us a bit more time and we'll get rid of that idiot for you. We're your biggest ally. Why mock us like this?" So obviously, we've talked a little bit about the Trump effect, as trolling has been effective in causing at least some disarray in the Liberal Party. If you don't appreciate Donald Trump's trolling of talking about he's going to make Canada a state, then what ways do you think he could better troll Trudeau without trolling Canada?
Okay, well, great. So let's assume that he's legit, right? Let's assume that he's worried about the Canadian border, and let's assume that he's worried about a trade imbalance. So those are two legit concerns. So come meet with us, right? Come meet with us now, and let's talk about it. I mean, the trade imbalance, I don't think there's much we can do about it. Like I said, we send him $400 billion worth of goods, and when we buy back 300 billion, that's not going to change. Actually, in fact, it's going in his favor slowly, because the value of the Canadian dollar keeps dropping. So that trade gap is going to close itself, because we've become so unproductive. So let's assume that's real. Then the other part is the border. And the borders, we are in agreement, right? The Canadians, I mean, I'm in agreement, but I always thought the border problem was Americans coming in at Roxham Road, coming in to our country. Turns out there's actually a lot of people going out, coming in, flying into Canada. Bad people are flying into Canada, and then walking across the border quickly into the US. So that problem's legit, needs to be addressed. And if he comes and talks to Pierre on that one, there's no need to troll even Trudeau, even anybody. We're all in agreement. The border needs to be fixed. In fact, just in the last 2 days, Trudeau made a same thing. Trudeau sent out a late night tweet saying we're beefing up the border, and that wasn't in the budget supplement. That wasn't in the fall update. So Trudeau responded. So yeah, I think I'm rambling, but if his concerns are real, we agree with his concerns, and I know Pierre agrees with his concerns. And again, going back to that, right? If Trump, or if Trudeau and Freeland thought that Trump's concerns were real, why did Trudeau and Freeland have a falling apart? Because there is it because in the latest budget update, Trudeau didn't put enough things to address the Trump um, claims. So back to that, I don't see Freeland resigning necessarily over a disagreement on how to handle Trump. Now, what's been really interesting also is the what's happening with the premiers, like and other people who've taken Trump's claims seriously, right? Like here in Alberta, Danielle last week made an announcement that she's going to increase the border security because she knows, right? Of that, actually, like let's step back to that. Of that big trade, that we do with the US, the $400 billion, about 50% of Canada's trade with the US comes from Alberta. Like we're a big, big, big contributor. So that's another point of tension, right? Is that Trudeau um, addressing Trump, he's actually not really, he's only responsible for the border part of it. The trade part is mostly the provincial matter.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see what Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has been doing amid the trade negotiations. She's obviously addressing what she calls Trump's trade irritants, looking to me really like she's trying really, really hard to get an exemption for Alberta energy if tariffs do come in, which, as you said, it seems like maybe that's not really his play. He's looking to get cooperation from Canada, among other things. But I did a lengthy ish interview with her about this topic that we published on Friday. So, for my audience, if you haven't already seen that, go back and take a look at that because we spend almost the entire interview talking about trade and what she plans to do to secure an exemption for Alberta. On back to Donald Trump on the thing about being a 51st state. I have to acknowledge, like, I know there's a lot of conservatives who are like, yes, this is the best thing ever. Canada should become America. I'm not one of those people. I do not think that Canada should join America. In the back of my head, I acknowledge that there might be a time when I have to leave Canada if it continues the direction that we're going in, if the Conservatives are not able to roll back some of the very harmful legislation and to curtail the harmful immigration, the harmful immigration numbers that we're seeing coming into this country. But I did a whole show on saying, I don't think that Canada should become America. And it's a little bit sad, but I have to say that I'm finding the jokes not even from Trump so much, but from other Canadians who are cheering him on a little perhaps tiresome. My takeaway from this all is that I actually felt a bit relieved to know that I still felt patriotism for my country because my entire adult life has been under the Justin Trudeau government. I graduated from high school in 2015, graduated from university in 2019, and this has been an incredibly dark and difficult period in Canadian history. And I kind of have to constantly remind myself what things were like when I was a kid because what I've known has always been this dark and difficult period of Justin Trudeau. And so my takeaway from the jokes and from even Canadians spurring Donald Trump on is that ultimately I do still feel hopeful. I do think that we can turn things around in Canada. And that actually took a little bit of soul searching from me. But I don't, unless you want to comment on that,
No, no,
Marty.
that's great. That's interesting what you mentioned because I lived through the Great Canada, right? I'm a 57-year-old man who worked in the oil patch. I mean, for me, the period from let's say 2001 2014 was glorious. It was glorious, and so and yes, I absolutely do not want to be part of the U.S. And what's interesting is the Canadians who do say, hey, we should be part of the U.S. The things that they mentioned that joining the US would solve, the problems it would solve, we can fix ourselves, right? People say, oh, they have if we join the US, they have a better constitution, they have lower taxes, they have more entrepreneurial people. I'm like, so okay, so let's do all those things in Canada. We don't need to join the US to fix what's wrong with Canada. We can fix what's wrong with Canada on our own, and then after that we should be like the US. I mean, we should be a super, well, we were, I mean, we're a G7 nation, right? We're and there's no reason we shouldn't be G5, G6, G4. Like we are a powerhouse of natural resources. We have two oceans, we have educated population. But let's ask ourselves why the country doesn't work and how do we solve the problems? And the problems can be all solved internally by getting rid of Trudeau, by perhaps reforming our constitution a little bit, and by remembering to be productive and by doing what we used to be good at. What we used to be good at is we're a nation that extracts resources. We used to extract oil, lumber, grain, minerals, things like that. And then suddenly in the last 30 years, we suddenly started convincing ourselves that what we were good at was actually bad. I was like, wow, we we convinced ourselves that extracting resources was bad for the planet. And nothing could be further from the truth. Can we do it without huge impact? Anyways, I ramble, but yeah, we don't need to join the US to fix what's wrong with our country. We should do it ourselves.
It's interesting that you say we convinced ourselves that what we're good at doing is actually bad, because essentially that's what wokeism is. It's to
Yep.
tell someone that what they are and what they are inherently designed to do, to tell women that the desire to have children is a bad and negative thing, to tell people who were, created perfectly and wonderfully in the image of God that they are in the wrong bodies and require harmful, invasive, and experimental surgeries. Very interesting point that you've made there, and I really think we've seen this the evilness of wokeness corrupting our society in more ways than one. Yesterday, or on Monday rather, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre had what his former campaign spokesperson Anthony Kosh said was probably his best day in office, being the opposition leader. I want to play a little section
Yeah.
from his speech that he made in the House of Commons on Monday, and it addresses specifically what we've been talking about today, how some people feel that they don't see a future for themselves in Canada. Take a look at this.
When I travel across this country, I consistently meet two types of people. One, those who are a little better off and tell me that, and I'll be very blunt about this, that if I don't win, they will leave the country. And they are very numerous. Yes. But I don't worry about them as much. You know who I worry about? The ones who can't leave. The ones who don't know, and if I can just use very blunt language, who tell me I don't know what the hell I'm going to do.
Okay, so really powerful speech from Pierre Poilievre. I think a lot of us know people who have said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in Canada. I've been transparent with my audience that I've had these thoughts of myself, not so much even because of the economic hardship, although that is a part of it, but largely because of the restrictions on speech and because the way the Liberal government wants to throw people like me who say men can't become women in jail. And that is ultimately their plan, to absolutely and totally curtail their speech, at which point I wouldn't even be able to work in Canada. And it's already become incredibly difficult for me to do so with, for example, not being able to post my article content on Facebook. I tried to post an op-ed the other day on my Facebook account. I even used the little link in comment section and it was still removed. So it's just becoming incredibly difficult for people on the right to be able to live freely. Marty, have you ever gotten to a point where you thought there might be a need to leave Canada?
I haven't because I'm retired now. So I'm retired, but I have 4 adult children, 3 sons that are engineers, and I've actually told my sons they should leave. So, um, because for the reasons you mentioned. I mean, for me it's not lack of it's not speech. It's my line of work and it's their line of work. They chose to follow my footsteps, be engineers and extract resources, and that's not valued in this country, and it's highly valued in the US. I mean, probably 10 of my closest friends, I don't know what that is as a percentage, but 10 of my closest friends have moved to the US in the last, you know 5 years. So it is happening. I talk about it all the time. The brain drain is real. People are moving to the US because uh, real talent is appreciated over there. Actually, I'm telling you, it's a side note. One of my boys is trying to get on with SpaceX. How incredibly crazy would that be, right? Getting on with SpaceX, and I wanted to just throw this out there as something I talked about yesterday. You know, Tesla is an American company worth $1.5 trillion. Okay. So $1.5 trillion, that's more than our GDP. That's an American company. So again, back to Trump being worried about a small $100 billion deficit between our two countries. Donald, like they can make that up in seconds by kickstarting their economy. And that's the biggest threat. That's actually, for us, the tariffs are a minor threat to us. The bigger threat is that the Americans will continue to steal our talent, that our dollar compared to theirs is devalued, that we're unproductive, they're highly productive. Like I'm more worried about, never mind tariffs. I'm just worried that if Donald kickstarts their economy the way he plans on doing it, that's bad for us. I mean, or it could be good. It could be good if we stop being woke and we go back to drilling for oil, growing wheat, cutting firewood, and mining for copper and aluminum, then we'll do just fine.
Yeah, you raise a really interesting point about the real threat of the US, which is essentially this brain drain that was incidentally also caused by Justin Trudeau. Just one last thing I wanted to touch on today while I have you. Totally different topic, but a few weeks ago you posted, this is in the context of Donald Trump will be coming to Canada for the G7 summit in, it is, I believe, May, and you posted that the last time the G7 summit was hosted in Alberta, it's gonna be in Kananaskis this time. You, as you spent a lot of time in the backwoods hiking and such, you actually ran into, I don't know if it was Secret Service or military, who it was, who were out there camping in preparation for the arrival of the US president. And I made a couple inquiries about this and learned that this is like a totally a thing,
Yep.
and that it's likely that we're going to see, some, like I said, not sure if it's Secret Service, but that they will be camping in the woods like at least a few weeks out ahead
They
of
were
his
these were
arrival.
they were here almost 4 weeks before his arrival, scoping the air, not just the village of Kananaskis. They were deep in the backcountry. Anybody going in and out was being checked. They suspend. I mean, yeah, because we can, like, it's very possible to sneak in, to have a clear line of sight to Kananaskis from some of the summits nearby, kind of thing. It's nefarious, but they had the whole area locked down, a huge area locked down. I had lots of funny stories from that one. I mean, I had a friend whose truck was almost demolished by a dog. Like, the dog jumped in, a Secret Service dog sniffing for all sorts of stuff. And I mean, you're in Alberta. What do we have in our trucks, right? Like, there's leftover blood from a moose kill and this and that. And the dog went nuts and started ripping up my friend's truck. And my friend was trying to stop it. And the Secret Service that basically said to him, we'll buy you a new truck. Don't worry about it. So it's like, wow, you never got a new truck.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was gonna say, I mean, it does sort of like make you think like, okay, that's crazy that all these preparations are needed for the US president. And we saw just this summer, I saw it personally there. I was there. What happens when
Yep.
the US Secret Service does not take the necessary precautions? It can actually result in lost lives, as it did that day in Butler. But at the same time, as Canadians, we live here, we pay taxes here. And when a US president comes to visit, restrictions are placed on our mobility rights. This happened to me in Ottawa a few years back. I believe the vice president at the time was visiting and he was going to be on Parliament Hill. And I was working on Parliament Hill at the time, but because I was a student, I would just kind of simply come every day, get my day pass to then go and watch a parliamentary committee hearing, which I would write reports on. And I was essentially told, like, you're not going to be allowed entrance in today. And I was like, well, this is my job. I need to have access. And eventually they did let me in. I had to walk all the way around. I honestly just think because the agent I was speaking with felt like flexing their muscles. The door was like a few feet away from me and they told me I had to walk all the way around to a different door. So, just a bit silly, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't quite sit right with me, the restrictions. And I do feel like your friend probably should have gotten his new truck.
They Yeah, you'd think intuitively that holding it in a place like Kananaskis away from everybody would be simpler, but it's not. I bet you the Secret Service and all the other people just do not look forward to this one. It's a complicated, very complicated to secure an area that big.
But at the same time, they might enjoy, I don't know, like if it was you, you would really enjoy all the backcountry camping for like a week out that you're getting paid for. So
Then I know now I have to go out there 5 weeks in advance and not 4. But yeah, if you hide, they'll find you. I'm sure they'll find you. Just coincidentally, or just historically, Kananaskis is where it's for the people who are not familiar with it. It's the big forest area south of Calgary. It's a big collection of parks, of provincial parks and provincial wildlands. But it's also where we used to keep German prisoners of war. So when you were a poor German soldier in World War II and you got captured, you took a boat all the way across the ocean and then the train all the way across Canada, and you were put in these camps. The conditions were good, and there was almost no security because at that time it was like, well, if you want to run, run. There's nowhere to go.
especially in the winter. Okay,
Yeah.
Marty, thanks so much. We're gonna leave it there for today. We appreciate Marty's insight as always. I did announce this last week, but I just want to let you guys know once again, if any of you missed last week's episode, that this is technically the last episode of Rachel and the Republic. I will still be doing my US content. It will just fall under the Rachel Parker Show. So moving into the new year, we'll have 2 episodes of the Rachel Parker Show weekly. And I just did a little poll on X today to kind of see what type of content you guys are liking from me. And basically, it seems the results are fairly split. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. We're going to have a little bit of Alberta coverage, a lot of federal news, and then some US Canada relations stuff mixed in there as well. And, I occasionally have the odd culture war story, and that seems to be polling less favorably, but we don't do a ton of that here anyway. So feel free to let me know which type of content you're especially enjoying that I put out as I do start to prepare my content for 2025. But in the meantime, just want to let you know that everything will basically be falling under the Rachel Parker Show beginning in 2025. Okay, guys, that's all we have time for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. God bless.